Welcome to the Regenerative Brands podcast. This is a place for consumers, operators, and investors to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, we have Joséphine Bournonville, who is a co-founder and the COO at Omie. Omie is supporting regenerative agriculture with its lineup of more than 200 French pantry staples that are sourced from regenerative farmers. Omie's agri-engineers work with over 40 manufacturers and 200 farmers to bring this vast assortment to life. Farming operations are audited with a Regenerative Index score. Then Omie works with the operators to create a roadmap for improvement and further regenerative practice adoption. And all of their products are given a Planet score, with more than 90% of the portfolio scoring an A or B, and nothing being offered that isn't at least a grade C. In this episode, we learn about Joséphine's journey from clean tech investing to agribusiness M&A to a regenerative food startup. Plus, we hear how Omie has scaled from a direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform into France's leading regenerative CPG brand. Joséphine was an amazing end cap to our first international series, y'all. Omie is doing incredible work, and it was inspiring and informative to hear about their efforts and compare them to all the other brands we've had on the show. Excited to share it with you. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Regen Brands podcast. Very excited today to have our friend Joséphine from Omie calling in from Paris, France with us today. So welcome, Joséphine.
Hi, Anthony. Very glad to be here.
Oh, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, and thank God for Google Translate, so I could prep for this interview. Joséphine was nice enough to schedule with us kind of last minute, and we spent some time together via Zoom. But I also spent some time scouring the website, and excited to share a lot about Omie with everyone. Joséphine, for those that aren't familiar, give us the lay of the land. What does Omie produce, and where can people find your products today?
Sure. So Omie is a regenerative food brand based here in France, as you mentioned. We have about 200 products today. It's all staple food, anything from ready prep meal to oil to biscuits and so on. And we started as a D2C company online with more than 15,000 customers so far. And now we're also being distributed by retailers here in France and everywhere.
Yeah, super cool. And I really enjoyed learning more about it this week already. And we know there's a fun origin story specifically with your journey. You've actually spent some time here in the States as well, Joséphine, but share a little bit about your background and kind of how Omie came to be.
Yeah, sure. So as for me, I started as a clean tech investor in a private equity fund, doing cross-border investments in India, Europe as well. So anything from renewable energy, recycling, a bit as well in agriculture, but that was the early stage of it. And then I joined Roulier, which is an agro supply company. And this is where I started going to the US. I was working as a business developer and M&A manager for the company. So basically working with a country manager to help them grow their business, and in particular in the United States, which, as I mentioned, led me to travel a lot in the US, going all the agricultural states, and we did some acquisition there in the field of fertilizer and animal nutrition. And after that, I continued a bit in M&A, like for another industrial company. But this is when I started to really go back to my first passion, which was environmental transition. And like I went into a whole process of, reading and getting to know more about what should I do for to be more involved into this field. This is when I came to know about Regen Ag. And it was really the haha moment for me, like I discovered, oh my God, there's like a big solution, like very concrete to do something about both carbon, but also biodiversity, and you could actually produce by repairing as well. So I was like, okay, I want to work in that field. And I started exploring, meeting a lot of people here, in the view of, starting something. I did not really know what. And on that journey, I met one of my co-founder, Chris, who was a previous entrepreneur, and he has an idea of creating something in the food, like sustainable food, and together we started to discuss about, okay, what is missing and what can we do as in that food sector. And we come up with this idea of, okay, we're going to build that brand that's going to be the bridge between production and consumer, and it's going to be fostering regenerated food, which was really starting. I mean, even today, that there's no one really claiming regenerative here in France, unlike the
Yeah.
US, where I know it's very more developed. And so that's how we started Omie, really.
Super cool. And the not to give it away, but the initial strategy that y'all took, kind of going direct to consumer and creating the online marketplace, I know was done purposely for a couple of reasons, and I think has served as a really cool beachhead market, really, for y'all, which is just amazing to see the vast product assortment. There's really no one over here that is making, I think, the type of regenerative claims that y'all are making that sells that many products, and so definitely want to make sure we talk about that. But take us into the early days, when y'all started really online and bringing this stuff to the consumer for the first time. What was the strategy, and what was going on with that?
Yeah, it was really like we were like, okay, let's take whatever are the French people eating today, like what are the main bestseller in terms of food, and let's make the
Yeah.
regenerative version of it. And it was really
Yeah.
how we looked at the range of products. And initially we started with immediately like a lot of product, like 80 products. So it took us 1 year to develop the first range of products. In also the co-founder team, we have a person coming from the food industry, so already with some connections with producers. And that's how we built our first range of product. And it was really like initially we started on LinkedIn, we were like to our friends and family, okay, we're starting this new brand and it's going to be this kind of product and who is interested. And we sold like small baskets of, there was like pre-sale of 10 of our future products that were not already there. And it worked, like we sold like maybe 300 baskets of those products. And a couple of months later, we started shipping them directly to our first groups of consumers.
Super cool. And I can only imagine and you walk me through a little bit, just the amount of coordination, right, with the manufacturers, and then also getting all the way down to the farm level, because we hear a lot about people doing direct consumer regenerative products that are meat or fresh produce or things that really aren't processed at all. So there's still a aggregation and a perishable thing you have to solve for, but y'all are manufacturing all of this as well. So it's not only the raw ingredients, the manufacturing, but also tracing it back to the farmers and trying to improve those systems as well. I mean, I just can't imagine the complexity and all that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like today we have more than 40 different manufacturers we work with. And beyond those manufacturers, it represents more than 200 farmers or group of farmers that we work with. And the reason we're able to go fast as well is because we worked with manufacturers and we're like, okay, we want to develop this product. So let's say cereals, for example. And this is how we want it to be, like we're thinking a bit of the recipe. And usually they already have some sort of a recipe themselves. And so we test it, we try it, we improve it. Like we also have a big health, aspect. So we want to reduce salt level. We want to have different sort of sugar to be less, to be more healthy. And they already have their range of supplier. And so we're like, okay, we're going to check who you're working with, what are doing, what are the practice. And on the way, we sometimes switch their supplier for our supplier. So we're going to tell them, okay, we have this wonderful like regen made agroecology nuts, for example, that we want to use in our cookies. So can you switch to that deal of cookies and of nuts? And they do it, and it's a process. So it won't be immediately like the product is 100% perfect and we have a full like 100% traceability, but over a couple of months, like we managed to switch, and also because we can provide the volume over time. So it's a good incentive for them also to work with us. And so it both ways, sometimes we bring the farmers, sometimes they have their own farmers that we go visit and we check that they respect what we want to do. And then they enter our program because we accompany them. Like we have, it's very something unique to us as a brand here. It's like we have our own internal team of agri-engineers. So we have 4 person dedicated really to source the suppliers and to accompany them on the way to more regenerative practice. And our first employee was an agro-engineer because it was very clear that for us the value was in building that connection with the farmer network.
Yeah, I love that title and term, agri-engineer. I'm going to steal that one from y'all. That's amazing. I think we have many agri-engineers over here that just don't call themselves that.
See.
But the product development ethos that y'all have taken really, I think, makes so much sense for trying to have regenerative aims, because there could be some products where we can only do one ingredient, but it's the most important ingredient. Or there
Yeah.
could be products where we could do all 12 ingredients. And if we had a super dogmatic outlook on it, the thing has to be 100% regen right from the get go, the pricing might not work, or the manufacturing might not work, or the volumes of ingredient sourcing might not work. And so I love that y'all are being really deliberate and taking that approach, but it's very clear from, our previous conversation that you're really tracking also continuing to improve. And it's not just enough to do whatever that phase one looks like. You got to
Yeah.
get to phase 2, 3 and
Yeah, yeah,
beyond.
yeah. But it's a good point you're making, because it happens that sometimes we wanted to develop some product, but we've not been able to, because we are not able to identify the right sourcing at the right price,
Mm,
and checking all the criteria that we want in terms of environmental impact. So I don't know, like for example, peanut butter, we still haven't had that because it
mm,
was impossible to find something that was really checking
yeah.
all the boxes, and it's fine, because at the end of the day, like we also do with what we have here, and it's a process. So it's a process of building the value with the farmer, building the connection. And we know that like the latest products that we release, which is cereals made for kids, very like healthy, like taking all the good ingredients, like 30% less
Mm,
sugar than the usual. And that took us like
mm,
10 months to develop, because we had to
mm.
find the alternative. Like there was no manufacturer that was doing specifically the type we wanted. So it was long, but at the end the product is exactly how we wanted it to be, and it has a good success. So it's all good.
And I know you shared with me also that the cereals have millet in them, right? Or
Yes.
millet, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
is how
Yeah,
y'all
it's
would
an
pronounce it.
example. And millet, initially we were also commercializing millet as such, but at the end, like
Yeah.
because it's a very new cereal, and like it's an ancient cereal, like it's very old, but in France it's not very popular. It's very popular in Africa
Hmm.
because it's very healthy, but in France it was not there for a long time. But there are very strong environmental benefits of millet. It's good for the soil. It provides a nourishment of the soil, and it's good as a rotation crop, right? But commercially, like just millet for consumer in France, like there was nothing. They don't know how to use it. It's long to cook. Like it's a very so we're like, okay, so maybe we should not just sell millet, but we managed to
Yeah.
actually put it in one of our products and actually create more value out of it and make people to actually like it, because it's transformed, and it brings a good complement in our cereals.
Yeah, and that's when food processing, and I'll put processing in air quotes, is actually a good thing. I mean, we have a woman over here named Joni at Snacktivist who's fighting for these ancient grains and these different grain crops like millet, but it's the same over here. They're not heavily commercialized either as an ingredient in products or just sold by themselves. And so if we can put them in a form factor that the eater is used to, like a cereal, that's huge, and that's how we can start unlocking demand, for these crops, if they can be subbed out kind of as an ingredient, where
Yeah.
doing a little bit of processing or manufacturing to do that is still a win.
Yeah, exactly. And we have another example in that case is sugar beet syrup, which is
Mm,
a
mm,
very healthy alternative, because there's if you put that instead of processed sugar, like
hmm.
the sugar level, like the glycemic index that you get is very lower, and so
Yeah.
it's way better, right? But there's a slight caramel test to it, and people also don't know how to use it direct, because it's a syrup, and we don't really use that here.
Mm,
But it's a
hmm.
very good ingredient. And in fact, we had a whole project where we help farmers in the north of France to build a factory, because usually like organic sugar, it goes to Germany because we don't have a processing facility in France for that. So we help
Okay.
a project of farmers, a cooperative, to invest into a new factory to be able to process that. And one of the important aspect for them was to have an offtake for their product and for the syrup, which was a secondary, items from the production. So we put it in different of our product, this syrup, and it's a great way, as you said, to actually bring a market to it, and have a very virtuous circle of using the product that's actually good also for the crop area and the rotation. So it's all ecosystem that you need to think of when you build the new product. Is okay, what am I going to put in those products that makes sense and can be useful for the farmers I work with as well.
And I love, it's a beautiful example that we're now seeing kind of a lot of the lessons we see with the brands over here are translating to the international episodes we've had. And this idea of it's not just the end product that you see at the grocery store shelf, it's the infrastructure that's created because the enterprise is creating that market demand and that market access. So you talk about that facility that y'all help spur, or even just the virtual infrastructure of, the farmers can get to enough volume that they can plan around making the changes or doing whatever. That's such a huge piece that I don't think these brands, get enough credit for being a huge part of developing. That is essential.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's key to really think your product developments in terms of that, like what ingredients that I already have in my network farmers I'm able to use, and so bring them more volume so that they can also, secure their work and be able to invest and build that whole thing.
Agreed. So take us back to the launch. Were y'all just, it sounds like y'all were selling to friends and family. Were you just selling to people in Paris? Were you selling across the whole country? What was that initial startup phase like? And take us through that.
Yeah, it was initially sold to Parisian friends and family mostly, just because we wanted also to be able to deliver in bicycle. Like there was a whole thing like building. Initially, we had this idea of building, the ancient milkman. Like he would do tour and we also sold, like I did not mention, but our initial project, we were also a distribution company. Like we were doing all the way to the distribution and having a direct link with consumers and.
Was that during the big e-commerce boom, like the grocery delivery boom? Also, the timing overlap?
Actually, we're starting during COVID, so like we're all remote and we're trying to build our business, being remote, and it was a bit bizarre. So we kind of missed like the big jump in e-commerce, because it was right at that time, but we're not ready because we're just building the product. So we came a bit right after. But it still helped us because of course people got used to buying online and getting their food delivered. So it really helped us to make that a thing, and for us starting like digital, it was very helpful to build the first community of consumers who would give us feedback on the product, on the brand, on the messages we were sending. So it helped us really be have this close link that usually as a brand, when you sell through retailers, you don't have, because you don't know your end customer. You can't talk to them. You can ask them questions. So today we still have very strong community, and our first of this first consumer who follow us over those last 3 years, and they're still there, and we even have a WhatsApp group where we like do like very informal exchanges, like, hey guys, we're launching this product, what do you think? Hey, can you relay this message that we're posting on LinkedIn because it's important for us? And they actually
That's
do
amazing.
it, and they send us even ideas. Okay, like they think about us, like they're like somewhere in a supermarket and they're like, hey, I like this product, but it would be so great that if Omie was doing it, so is it the plan? And we're like, yeah, why not? Like if some other people want it, so we might have a look into it. So it's very like close relationship, and it's great interaction.
Yeah, it seems like that was like an amazing tool and still is on the research and development from a product innovation and product development perspective. And also a proof of concept, right? Can you create some actual economics that make sense? And then can you show that there's a demand in the consumer that wants these products? How long was it strictly e-commerce? And then when did y'all start going into retail? And what was that path like? Because I'd love to hear that and compare it to what I think would be the equivalent in the States.
Yeah, I think if we were for full digital, maybe not even a year. I think like very quickly we were contacted by another company that was actually, it was another startup, like, but they had fruits and vegetable baskets, and they wanted us, staple food as well to complement the basket. And they also have physical like warehouse where they did some selling, but it was mostly online. So they were our first like B2B client, B2B2C clients, because they
Yeah.
bought our product and they were selling them to final clients.
Yeah.
And so that was after a year maybe. But then it's really over the last year and a half maybe last year, even like 2023, where we're starting going massively into retail being distributed. Because it was a natural path. Like we were being contacted. Like the first deal were really inbound. Like a company being like, okay,
Amazing.
your product look cool. Like maybe we can do something together. So we had company you might know, which is called Decathlon, which is a sports company, just really not related to what we do. But it's a company doing a big shift in sustainability, like in the clothing and sports industry. And they also had a range of food, like
Wow.
cereal bars, like stuff you usually eat with sports, and
Yeah.
energy bars and this kind of thing. And they were like, okay, maybe you can develop something, a concept together around regenerative food, because it makes sense for us. We're selling the healthy, more healthy for you, but also healthy for your planet through
Yeah.
sports. So it was a whole concept. It was really more like through branding that we went into this, but it was a good kicker, like to show that we can work with other brands that are not even related to food and bring something like credibility for them to make more sustainable products. And then today we have different other like distributors that are oftentimes specialized in organic or sustainable food, and it's more logical for us, of course, because they already understand what we do and understand the value that we're bringing. And especially over the last 2 years, like the organic markets in France has been a bit in trouble because uh, with inflation, like they saw their sales decreasing over the last 2 years. And so for us, we represent like an interesting, alternative that is more dynamic, like that's bringing something new to the organic market, who's been a bit relying on whatever it was over the last years. So we also saw something like a good opportunity to build something new with them, and that's what they see in us. Like we're modern, like we can talk direct with consumers. We have this region, like a thing that they don't have, but they understand they have to go to that, because they understand that organic is not enough, and so they're really questioning their own model as well.
There's so many things I want to unpack out of there, and if anyone's watching the video, they just saw me scribble down some notes as you were finishing up chatting there. Tons of stuff to unpack. The inbound outreach from the sports company is really interesting because I think it shows that how much further y'all are ahead over there in Europe. I think on some of these topics than we are, and there's some of that B2B interest over here, but that stuck out as like it seemed further along than us. And I was going to ask about distributors and getting into retail because the typical path over here is you lock down Whole Foods and you go through UNFI to get into Whole Foods, and then you use that distribution to get into independence. And it's the same thing for Sprouts, but it's KeHE instead of UNFI. Is it similar to where y'all had a couple key retail, relationships that then went through distributors, and then you're just bridging from there? How does that work over there?
Yeah, I think it's the same. Like there's this divide, which I mean, frankly, it's bizarre when you don't come from the food sector. Like, why is it so different? Like, organic store. If you go in non-organic store, they'll be like, oh, you're going in mainstream, so we don't want you anymore. Like, so you really have to know which one you're gonna target. And for us, of course, we're going for mostly specialized organic stores. And as you mentioned, for the States, you have a couple of retailers that have that are the big ones, that you want to get in, and that's the guy we're starting to discuss with now, because initially we build our credibility with smaller like retailers or a bit different. Like we also have this what we call kind of market, like live marketplace. It's more like fruit and vegetables area, like very open with like fresh product, but they also have like staple corners, and those guys are very open to testing new things and going into new concept, and they like the brand that bring them this. So this is where we started and we're going now. And we have the middle retailers in organic, and now we're going for the bigger ones. So yeah, I think it's pretty much the similar kind of thing.
Yeah. It sounds like there is a lot of similarities. Have Have you gotten pushback from the legacy organic retailers or just organic stakeholders that, hey, this is, there is some contention over here, and I believe globally, kind of organic versus regen when there really shouldn't be, but have you had pushback there, and like how do you see those playing together long term?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you really have the two ways. Like some of them will be like, oh, you're regen, like it's why you're even talk about regen? Let's just talk about organic, like what we do, we've been doing for a long time. You're like making it less clear for consumers, like they don't understand. There's a pushback in that sense that they feel a bit threatened by the concept of regenerative. And there are the other ones who are like, okay, we understand what you're doing. You're going beyond that, and actually, it's needed. And we know as organic retailers that we need to change as well, because we've seen it for the last 2-3 years. There's a pushback from consumers because consumers don't understand the value behind the price, and so we need to go into more traceability, more transparency. So they see that value that we're bringing, but it's really there's a middle ground where there's both sides that we've seen, but it's interesting to see that even full organic retailers, like now we some of our products are in the chain that's in the south of France, and it's full organic, but they still took took our product. Like, I mean, 60-70% of our product are organic, right? Like most of them. But it's not something that we actually like present more, like we're more saying we regenerative, we do this, we do that. It's not the organic fact that we really present as the most important thing. It's more the whole process and what is regenerative and all that. So, but yeah, we find both situation, yes.
Yeah, it's a tricky topic, and I feel for like all opinions in it, and I try to keep an intermediary, space within it. But I do think if regenerative has to be organic, or if it's tied to organic, it really limits our ability to have impact and scale change. And that is really my big pushback. Is just, yes, that still needs to be the aspirational high bar, regenerative organic. But what are we like? Everything before that still exists, and it's the vast majority. So how do we get people on the path, and then how do we give market validation along the way? And it seems like to me the people that are actually doing the best at that are just being super transparent with all the stakeholders in the supply chain and the consumer. So would love to hear, like, how are you guys telling this story? How are y'all communicating this to customers? Do they even know what regenerative means? Like, how is that working?
Yeah, it's a very good point. And from the beginning, we've been trying to avoid that being categorized as either organic or non-organic, because we know the situation on the ground is different. Like there's really different paths to reach the regen stage, organic plus regenerative, and that's of course the objectives, right? But we have to recognize that to go there it can take a couple of years, and that doesn't mean meanwhile the farmers don't do something right. So you need to be able to show that. So the way we build that with consumers is through transparency, as you mentioned. Like we're 100% full transparent brand. That's really in our DNA to be transparent. So we, for every product, we'll show who gets paid what. Like, so you pay something like €3 for your biscuits. How much get the farmer, how much gets everyone, and that's one thing. And second is being transparent about the practice, like the agricultural practice that are being used, and we disclose everything, like what's going on, what are the program that we implemented with the farmers. We show photos, like we report on what we do, and by being this transparent, it actually brings confidence with consumers. And at the end of the day, consumer, they don't even it doesn't even matter for them at the end of the day if it's organic or not. Like we actually asked the question, like, and we had like 1,000 respondents. We asked, hey, did you know, like, actually 100, like all Omie products are not full all organic, like we have maybe 60%. What do you feel about it? Like, what's your, and most of them reply like, oh, I don't care, I trust Omie. And that was like the best answer, like, because they actually trust us, and that's what we want to build. Because over the years, there's been a profusion of, labels. Like, it's very different for a consumer in the supermarket to know what to choose, because sometimes you have like okay, it's organic, but then it comes from super far away, or it's organic, but it's under plastic, and then you don't know why you're paying so much. And so it's the whole thing is just about telling exactly like full traceability, full transparency, and build back that trust. And one of the things we were putting, showing to people when we were explaining the concept was a survey, saying that at least in France, it's like 70% of consumer, they don't trust the brand anymore. Like they don't trust the brand and they don't trust the retailer,
Yeah.
because there is really a lack of trust because of all the scandals that has been going on over the last years as well, and because the food sector is very known for being opaque. Like you don't tell the
Yes.
margin, you don't tell what's going on, you don't even know who is the manufacturer, you don't know who is the farmer. Nobody tells anything, and so we decided to be very different in that sense, and we say everything, and it worked for us because we build that trust.
Yeah, I love that. And I think long term, like transparency is such a great strategy because that consumer distrust is at an all time high. And I saw the same survey or study results that you're talking about. It was a few months back. And especially in the younger demos, they are super keen on transparency and needing to trust kind of who they purchase from. So I think long term, no matter what we do from a B2B perspective of you have to be this certification, you don't have to do this, you have to blah, blah, blah. Like it's going to get clearer and clearer, especially with the continual rise of AI and social media and everything that people are going to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You talked about this radical pricing transparency really quickly, and I want to make sure we really talk about it because this is radical. Like this is a big deal. Like I'm on the website right now, and there's literally a pie chart of I think this is what's the product here. This is pesto. It's a jar of pesto, and it shows me the exact amount of euros going to each person in the supply chain for this jar of pesto, which is just it's crazy. Like why? How are you doing that? And I'm super curious, like how are you doing it at retail? Because it's easy to do on the website, but if I go to the store and get that jar of pesto, what does it look like?
Yeah, it gets a bit more complicated. You're right. I mean, this is what you see on our website because, of course, we can be full transparent. But the retailer, what we do is they usually have a version where you see what get the farmers and what are the logistic costs, but you don't see the split of margin. Like, if you're Omie customer, you can actually rebuild it because you know Omie, like what we get because we disclose that. But of course, the retailer, they won't do it because they're still not at that level, even though we're pushing, like we're explaining. And I think the AD might, build its way for them. But it still remains something a bit difficult for retailers to be transparent, of course.
When did y'all start doing that? Like who decided that was going to work? Like I want to know everything about this transparent pricing model. So
it's to be honest, I think really like the very first brainstorm day we had, I could even find out the first drawing that we did on the board, like saying, this is gonna be the tomato sauce, and we're gonna say like who gets what, and with the split, with the little drawing, and the tomato sauce were really our totem product because it's a product which has lots of controversy, like tomato coming from China, and then there is a label saying it's made in France just because it's been put in pots in France or something like that, with a lot of bizarre thing in it. So it was really our flagship product, and the transparent thing was really from the beginning we wanted to do it because with this idea of in mind that people want that actually.
Super cool. And it is so opaque in processed and packaged goods. And so I just think it's so amazing and excited to follow along and see how it continues to develop for y'all. Want to chat a little bit, Joséphine, about just the actual agronomic piece, the regen ag that's happening on farms. And this is a more difficult conversation than some of the guests we have because they might have one hero product, right? They do cattle and they sell beef. And so it's a really simple story. Y'all have 200 items with all kinds of ingredients. So I think maybe the best way is to talk the audience through kind of the Regenerative Index and how y'all partner with farmers, and then maybe a case study of a specific item and some ingredients that y'all have done some work to improve, practice adoption or what's happening on farms. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So from the beginning, we started partnering with a company here in France, actually NGO, that has developed what you call a Regen Index. And it's all set of measure to actually, at the farm level, identify where does the farm stand in terms of its regenerative path. So you look at, okay, what are the chemical usage, like the tractor passage, like how many passage, this kind of thing. What do you do in terms of cover crops, in terms of water management, in terms of biodiversity management and all that. So there's really a lot of criteria. It's a long audit kind of process. Not long, but it's a whole list of criteria you need to check. And of course, it's done on the farm, and they do measurement, like soil measurement and all that. And then it gives you like the initial picture. Okay, where does the farm stand today? And for us, usually we have this minimal requirement that you should be at least in that level in terms of where you stand today, which is not, of course, 100 over 100, but it's like 40 over 100 or something. And then the important thing for us is that actually you're ready to engage in more, and you're ready to work with us, work with our engineers here, to work on a roadmap. Like it's usually 1 year and then 2 years, 3 years roadmap, where you will be like, okay, I'm going to start doing this, that, and all that. And we help them into that journey. Of course, through the also association, like the partner that we have. We organize like training session. We organize a meetup between our farmers as well, so that they can share practice. And we also dedicate one person of ourselves into that. So we finance the diagnostic, like the Regenerative Index, through this one person. So yeah, it's also very useful for the farmers because they have the starting point as well to know where they stand today.
That's amazing. So just to recap that, there's an NGO that helps y'all provide this regenerative index score. Farmers have to be at a certain baseline for them to be in your supply chain, and they have to be willing to take this improvement journey. And then y'all leverage 1% of sales and actually have skin in the game, and your agri-engineers, your team, to help them on that journey, create a roadmap, both from a farm practice adoption perspective and a product development perspective.
Yeah, exactly that. And to give you like some, it's a lot of work.
Amazing.
But it's great because we're starting to see, over the last 3 years progress. But yeah, to give you, I think last year, so 2023, we've done like 42 visits, like humans, like being there on the farm, testing what's going on, like catching up on what they've been doing. There was 10 audits performed, like regen audits, 6 training, and five days of meetups, like where we're organizing like sessions. So it's a whole network, and we work with maybe 50 groups of farmers, like farmers or group of farmers, and so it's the kind of thing we do.
What's been the hardest thing to source besides peanut butter? You stole one of my questions when you answered that one right off the bat, but I'm curious, like, what else has been challenging?
One other thing was what's the name? The raspberry, like the purple thing. Yeah, because it was very hard to find like sufficient volume and being done the right way. So it took us a long time to have the jam because we wanted the jam, but now we have it. But but we don't know whether we'll be able to maintain it because the volume is so low that we don't know. Like if 1 year you have problems that you don't know the next year. So there are a couple of things like that, and then there's things that we still like, because of deindustrialization, like we missing some industry now, like for example, like cutting vegetables, like cutting industry. There's not much cutting happening anymore in France for some reason. So sometimes you have to source, you cut onions from a bit far because it's not there yet. So this kind of thing, that seems a bit crazy that you don't have industry for cutting fruits and stuff, but it's really happening. So one of the things we also look at is also long term, like how can we get involved into helping maybe more industry come back and being able to process the thing we need to process here, like onions, for example, like cutting onions, this kind of thing. So
Yeah, and I love that because it ties into what we've kind of already talked about, which is this whole need for the continued support of infrastructure that supports regenerative, or building additional infrastructure that supports regenerative. And the way y'all have designed this supply chain and the product development and the go-to-market really should be value add to those people as well, instead of just they're just a manufacturer that you negotiate a price with, and that's it, right? It seems very strategic and important.
Yeah, one of the things we also testing is three parties contract. Like there is us, it's the farmer, and then there's the manufacturer, and we try to engage in each other in volumes and what are we going to do, why we work together, and so that we secure as well the offtake for the farmers, and this is something we would like to generate to expand more in the future. When we launch product, we see that it works well, so then we start having more certainties on volume and all that, so we can then go back to the farmers and say, okay, we can actually see that there's demand for this, so maybe we can build something together. Like, it's more like it's like some business have been doing it for a long time, like in chocolate, you have this ethical ways of contracting with a certain price, like a range of price. And so this is something we really believe in, and we would like to do more in the future.
Yeah, I find it odd when people push back really hard on forward contracting, because the mainstream food system does it with everything. And so does it need to be shifted for a regenerative outcome and a regenerative system? Absolutely. But people that kind of totally dismiss it as not an option, when I think it's actually a really good option, it's kind of shocking to me, because I've been a part of those conversations of like, hey, we want to pay this set price on lettuce, 52 weeks of the year. And we know the market will fluctuate, and you can design that. And people don't understand that all the major food service and retailers, especially at least I can just speak for the US context, like that's the majority of that is contracted, and that price is set, or it's set on a pricing structure or something. I want you, Josephine, to walk the audience also through the Planet Score, because it kind of, to me, is the way the Regenerative Index shows up on the product, but it's even more than the agronomy. It has to do with the human health implications and all these other things. So can you talk people through that and how that works?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very useful tool, and so Planet Score is a environmental score that has been developed by an independent institute here. It's actually the main base is a carbon footprint of ingredients, like the usual one, and it took a national database of which ingredient has what sort of a carbon footprint. But then they go far beyond that by adding criteria around chemical management, antibiotics, animal welfare, soil management. And so there's a lot more into looking at just the carbon footprint of an ingredient. And then so you provide them all the data on your product and give you a rating, which is the Planet Score, which is A, B, C, D, and taking into account all those things. And then you have at your product level a rating for environmental footprint. And it's very useful for us to improve our products over time. Like say some of our products, they started at C, and then over time we managed to move them to B and then to A by either shifting some ingredients or working on some of the ingredients, like value chain, how they were being made and all that. So it's really like a good tool for us to work with.
Do products have to be at a certain level? Like, do they have to be at least a C to start, or how do y'all approach that?
Yeah, they have to be at least a C. And today, and of course we target B and A, and it's like we have 90% of our product that are either B or A. So, it's really for us important.
Is Planet Score something that's ubiquitous in France? Like, are there a lot of products at the grocery store using this, or is this pretty new, and y'all are one of the few early adopters? Like, what is that?
It's fairly new. We were the first food brand to actually score all of our products with Planet Score, but now, so we were really happy to do it, and we really work with them to also help them with the methodology. So we were really involved into also helping to improve the tool over time. But now it's also, there's the big organic retailer called Biocoop in France, which is like it's not so. I mean, it's like more than a billion sales. Retailer, and they actually now also rated all of their product, like their own brand, with Planet Score. And so, but we were really the two like pioneers, and now there are more and more company getting interested by it. So it's really cool to see that it's taking an edge now.
So it seems like it's gaining a lot of B2B momentum. Do you think consumers are really paying attention to it? Like, have y'all seen sales decline or uplift based on the scores? Like, are you seeing, how's the consumer reacting to it?
Uh, I think it's a bit early to know
Yeah.
because for us, we were already so transparent and people already know
Mm,
we're doing all of this. I don't know at the retail level if it's probably helping because people more and more they want to know if what they buy is actually good for the
mm,
planet, not just
mm.
for them, for their health. So I'm sure it's helping, but then I don't know how to measure it, but I think it's useful, yes.
I want to switch gears to current events, and maybe have y'all educate us on something that's happening in your neck of the woods, which is the farmer protests.
Yeah.
They're happening a lot in France and even I think across Europe. And I really don't know the whole story behind it, why it's happening.
Mm.
My assumption is it has something to do in relation to what y'all are doing. So would love to have you break that down for us and share like what your perspective is on what's going on there.
Yeah, it's really it's been like 2 weeks now that the protest ongoing and still
Mm,
on, like even though there's been some announcement, like farmers are still protesting. And it's all about, like, it started like the main initially thing was, oh, there's too much regulation, right? Like there's too much
mm,
regulation coming from
mm,
Europe, and it's unfair because we apply it in France, but then some other country don't, and then we import products
mm,
coming from the country that don't apply it. So it's unfair
mm.
competition, competitive advantage,
Yeah,
to the detriment of farmers here in France
yeah.
and in some other country in Europe. So and it's true as well, because we also getting involved into trade deals with other countries that don't have the same environmental
Yep.
regulation. And so, of course, you have like cheaper products coming to France and people buying those products. And so, farmers who actually should be able to have a better price for their product become
Mm,
not competitive. So they're not able to sell. And so they have to decrease the price. So it's all vicious circle. So
mm,
really, like, the compensation that farmer get is the main like problems. There's farmer don't get enough. Like there's a big like poverty and distress in farmers today. Like not all of
yeah.
them. Like the situation can be very different from types of farmers.
Right.
It's worse in like milk industry and meat, like pork especially, because there's more
Mm,
competition as well.
mm,
But it's funny I mean, it's not funny at all, but you notice that we actually now we importing more and more, like we as a country,
right.
I mean, France is a big agricultural country, is top number one for lots of things like cereals and all that. But over the years, we're importing more because people are not able to pay for the price
Hmm.
that's actually more ecological farming is. So
Hmm.
that's really the main issue. And then also the farmers are actually asking for more transparency because they're like, okay,
Mm,
you put us in competition with tomato sauce that the consumer will think comes from France with
yeah.
French tomato, but actually no, and it's made from somewhere else with the bad condition and all that. So it's not fair for us, and you should tell the consumers what's going on, and which is actually what
Mm,
we also promote, because it's true, like if they had the choice and if they know if they had all the information, consumer would
mm,
probably choose differently.
yeah.
So yeah.
It seems so crazy to think about that as an American, thinking about France and just the rich history of food there, and the
Mm,
fact that the amount of food that's now being imported instead of reshored or grown locally.
yeah.
And we're having the same issues over here with the share of the food dollar going to the farmer in an
Yeah.
inadequate amount, and that's really, I actually think it's a horrible situation. Farmer suicide rates are sky high. I
Yeah.
think worse than any other profession. So obviously, don't wish any of that. But if we can use that pain, or we can see that massive opportunity to change that for the better, like I think people that are building regenerative systems, there's such an opportunity to heal there and to,
Yeah.
to help bolster that.
Absolutely. I mean, being more ecological is part of the solution. And the only thing is, as we know, is it takes time and it can take a couple of years.
Mm,
We need to help the farmers. And of course, there has to be government involvement to support the farmers during that time,
mm,
um, like subsidy for training, for maybe the lack of the initial year you might lose some yield. There's
mm,
also a lot to do with insurance. Like insurance has to evolve also to
mm,
take that into account, climate
mm,
change, but also the risk of yield when you change practice. And this
mm,
is also something we're actually building we've been partnering with AXA Climate. AXA is a big insurance company, and AXA Climate is the branch dedicated to environmental insurance, like environmental problem insurance. And so we're doing a pilot with them in one of our farm, where they're actually developing a new insurance product so that they could get more adapted to what the farmers moving their practice to more environmental practice have.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much overlap with, I think, things that we're fighting for on a federal and a state level over here in terms of crop insurance programs, in terms of subsidies for practice adoption, in terms of kind of carrot versus stick to incentivize farmers. And it's certainly a huge, complex issue that I don't ever think I'm an expert on, but know enough about to kind of inform the work that I do. I'm curious, Joséphine, like, we didn't really wrap the commercial story from the direct to consumer offering to now the retail offering. So just give us an update of like, where's the business at now from a commercial perspective? What does the future growth opportunity look like? What are y'all thinking on growth strategy and kind of where's everything at right now?
Yeah, so right now we think for this year, like 2024, is really building our notoriety in maybe 4 different categories. Like, we had this very big, large range of products, but we actually in that range are starting to build our strengths on a couple of categories. One of them is ready-made meals, like prep meals that you can just quickly heat up and eat. And healthy, of course, and with all the environmental impact that we do. And so we have this very interesting range of ready prep meal, then sauce, that same thing, like sauces you can use very quickly for your meal. And then we have snacks, like salty snacks, and then sugary snacks. And those 4 categories are really what we're pushing now with retailers. And it's easier for us to enter with this specific category that are actually already proven that consumers like them, like they're really popular and they're our best products, instead of trying to push the whole range, which is sometimes challenging for retailers because they're like, okay, we already have this product, so how do we put yourself in and all that. So this is our strategy for this year, is really go into the big specialty retailers with those category of products, build a notoriety on that, and then after maybe we can push some more products. But this is really what we're looking at for this year.
Are the ready-made meals shelf stable? Are they frozen? Are they in refrigeration?
Yeah, it's a shelf, like it's an like in a
everything shelf
jar.
stable, the whole portfolio. Then,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this specific range of product, we've been developing some of them with a very popular chef here in France, Thierry Marx.
Nice.
So it's also, there's the label of the chef, like, because we've been working a lot on the recipe, like the taste. And it's really amazing product, and it's like alternative to very popular like meat. Like there's a vegetarian bolognese, like based on veggie based, and it's very yummy. Like it's very healthy. There's not too much salt, but it's compensated by herbs. So there's really an identity into that product as well. So those very flagship products that we're pushing are helping also to build our notoriety as a healthy, alternative.
You're making me hungry, Joséphine. I know you're really focused on France right now, and it sounds like even specific regions and specific types of retailers in France. Is this, is the broader vision the EU? Is it really just, hey, this is going to be an amazing French brand and we're just always going to be like, buy France for France? Like what's the vision geographically?
Yeah, no, we're definitely looking at Europe because we think like same thing, some of the product could be actually stars in other product because they represent a lot of also, like the French chef building the product. So we really think there's a potential also in other countries. We haven't started looking into it yet because we're first things first, we focus on France, but definitely at some point we would like to expand because the old model and the transparency play, we think it could also allure to some other consumers in other countries.
Yeah, and I know it's more challenging to go into other countries in the EU than it is to like sell across state lines here in the US because you're printing different languages on packaging and
different
sourcing from
languages.
different farmers. Like, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get
it's
that it's a
all
little more
different thing.
complex.
It's yeah, you could think that Europe is just one thing, like it's easy to go in and there, but no, like each country has its own language, and sometimes you have several language in one country, and your labels have to have that language. So yeah, it makes it a bit complex, but.
How has the fundraising environment been for y'all? Like how have y'all funded the business? What is that like over there in Europe? I mean, I'm super intrigued by that as an investor over here, but know nothing really about the comparables there.
Well, we were lucky to be able to raise quite significant amount of money, like almost 15 million so far in equity.
15 or 50?
15 million from like
Congrats.
and from very like investor that actually understood what we're doing, like one of our investor is called 2050. That's the name.
Nice.
And
Nice.
actually their goal is to build business that actually gonna help to solve some of the big problems, and they really have this ecosystem view of trying to support businesses that building an old ecosystem. And so they understand what regenerative ag is, because at the beginning, like the initial years, it was a bit difficult because none of the investors were really in France were really acquainted with the regen play. It's not like in the US. I think in the US you have like maybe 7 years advance compared to us in terms of the investments scene for regen ag and regen everything. So at the beginning, it was a bit hard to explain that, yes, we're building a brand. It's going to be about regen ag and why it's important, blah, blah, blah. So the initial year was a bit more difficult. But then we had some business angel initially that were really helpful. And then quickly a fund that one of my partner was working with before invested as well. And it's more of a VC classical fund, but they had the impact section, so they were looking to those kind of projects. And then we did this bigger fundraise with this other fund. So yeah, it's interesting that now you can actually find investors that are here for the long term, and this fund is actually evergreen fund, so they don't have this necessity of like short-term mindset, which is very important when you in that sector. It's not like tech sector where everything is very quick and everything.
Yeah, I think something that is discussed a lot but maybe overlooked in our space is not only do you have to have the right type of capital and investor and time horizon for the enterprise, but for us, in these businesses that are creating market demand, you have so many pieces upstream that also need to play as the symphony. And are those people capitalized correctly? And most of the time, a lot of those capital pools aren't there, or those financial models aren't there, or they're not there at the right time or whatever. And so it's not only like a challenge to do that for yourself, but a challenge to do that for the ecosystem that supports you. And it sounds like y'all have found a groove there, at least to some degree, which is great to hear.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the whole thing is the ecosystem, and you need to have everyone working together in the same direction, which is actually why on the side we're supporting the creation of a non-profit organization that's supporting regen ag in general. And the idea is to bring together all the different actors like co-op, producer, retailers, and we were like, okay, let's do it even outside of us so that it can be independent and just serve the whole cause, without the commercial aspect of it. So it's really part of the success is to be able to have the whole ecosystem moving together at the same time.
What's the name of that organization?
It's Lively Earth. And we launched it December last year. So yeah.
Beautiful. Love it. And for those that are listening in Europe, because we're a couple weeks out, we will both be at the Regenerative Food Systems Investment Forum in Brussels in a couple weeks. So if you're interested in regen, food and ag investing, or just commercial kind of enterprise ecosystem building, definitely check out that event. We'll share it in the show notes. The name of your investor, Joséphine, is the perfect segue into our final question, which is, how do we get regen brands to have 50% market share by 2050?
Oh, it's a good question. I think we have to really build communities, like be very good in terms of, I mean, use the usual play as well, so be very good in terms of marketing, be very good in terms of operation, like just be very focused like any normal other brands, and just use all the tools that we can use to get there. And that's one aspect, like very, very, very excellent in terms of operations and what we do. And then the second aspect is probably have a play in building public awareness around it. And for that, I think leveraging, even political lobby, like being involved into the whole discussion, like being present in the debate around sustainable agriculture and what we want agriculture to look like in a couple of years. So have also key opinion leaders to support our views and get involved into it. And it's very important that like we're starting to have like key opinion leaders understanding what it is and why is it so important. And so I think that's going to be really key to have the regen becoming in the public like very popular.
Yeah, it's so true, and it resonates. And I'm a firm believer that yes, we need to build these market-driven enterprises that show proof of concept for this, but we have to do all the other stuff. We have to do the movement building. We have to do the policy advocacy work. It's all so important. And I know all of us are overworked and underpaid already. And so asking people to do even more is a lot, but that's where strength in numbers comes in. And when you said Lively Earth the first time, I didn't remember that was Fanny. And so I love Fanny. She's amazing. Yes. Yeah. So,
and she came and she spent like 7 years in the US. So she saw the whole scene there. And then she came back in France. Was like, okay, I need to do the same. Yeah. So we've been working with Fanny over the last year to build Lively Earth. And we're a co-founder, and we find other co-founder in the companies.
Nice.
And it's exactly what you say, like having an organization that's also taking this role in the public scene to build awareness and do advocacy for that.
Yeah, and it's what we're trying to do, right? Regen Brands is the media company. We have the new nonprofit, the Regen Coalition, and then Outlaw Ventures is the investment company. And there's tons of other people. That's just my little world, but there's tons of other people that also do similar things or overlapping things in there. But we need to do all of it, and we kind of need to all do it at the same time, which is difficult, but there's a lot of synergies and overlap there, and I believe we can. So just, really appreciate you joining us, Joséphine. This was super educational. Love what y'all are doing. We will share in the show notes, but for anyone that's curious, just upon listening, the URL is just omie.fr, if I remember correctly,
exactly.
Or different?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was amazing.
Thank you so much. It was great. Thanks.
For show notes, episode transcripts, and more information on our guests and what we discuss on the show, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also find our Regen recaps on the website. Regen recaps take less than 5 minutes to read and cover all the key points of the full hour-long conversations. You can check out our YouTube channel, Regen Brands Podcast, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe to future episodes, and share the show with your friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Regen Brands Podcast, brought to you by the Regen Coalition and Outlaw Ventures. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.